Alright guys, such a comic here today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The OpTic guys give their perspective on the current state of the meta here in Black Ops 7, especially changes they would like to see made after Major 1 when the new patch update is going to come into effect. Dashy especially believes there's been some serious bias lately in some of these gentlemen's agreement decisions, but Octane reckons that many of the teams have agreed after Major 1 it is a clean slate again. The GAs go out the window, we decide what we use again from step 1. Is that actually going to be the reality though with some of these teams and some of the players behind the scenes? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We shall get to some roster drama in due course as well, more than likely later, although we will start with this. So in challenges, Mohawk's done it again. I always cracked up laughing when I saw this. I couldn't believe my eyes quite, because the other day, you guys might remember, I think we talked about this, Mohawk did a tweet to say, free agent, I'm taking it serious again. I'm back, right? This is the season. I'm going to commit to challenges. We know that Mohawk's been a big name in challenges over the last few years. Won back-to-back Challengers World Championships a couple of years ago. For various reasons, he's been in and out of the scene. But he said, look, you know what? This year, there's a lot of noise in challenges. I'm going to run it back. I'm going to give it a go one last time. Well, here we are, literally 3 days later, and he's retired again. I don't know how many times Mohawk or these Challengers kids retire, but it almost makes it not even worth talking about when they do, because you never know if a couple of days later, when they retire or unretire, they're just going to be back at it again. So anyway, Mohawk then says, announcing my retirement from competitive Call of Duty, was only back for about 3 days. Thank you for all the unforgettable memories. So look, we'll see if that's the last time for Mohawk. If it is, it's been a pleasure. If it's not, which it probably isn't, he'll be back in due course at some point elsewhere as well. Couple of things, Scrapp's been playing some Chels over the last few days. Obviously, we know that Thieves had a very important weekend on their hands. They did get a huge win against OpTic. This is a nice little nade spot here you can employ on the Den. Pretty standard stuff, you might argue, but a useful one regardless. TJ was also getting absolutely cooked. Here we are on the Colossus. And yeah, questions on whether Colossus is going to stay. We know that in addition to this meta change with the weapons that we're going to discuss in a second, questions on what the map pool is going to be. Because we've got Meltdown, we've got obviously even Express, right? I mean, Express is, we know, a solid search and destroy map. We've seen it played before. It wasn't played when the game first came out because I think the train was broken. The train kept running even if it was in competitive rules and it was turned off, which was a bit of an issue. So they didn't play it, which I understand, but equally, is it time to maybe consider something else? There's plenty of other maps in the game as well, Utopia as well in the game now, and some people think that could well be viable. So we're about to discuss in a second pros reconsidering the state of play with the GAs, reconsidering the weapons that we are currently using and whether that needs to change. And if you're going to reconsider all that, it might be worth reconsidering the map set as well. But the pros don't choose the map set. They choose what guns they use, right? Because even if the CDL says, no, you can't do gentlemen's agreements and ban things between yourselves, they can't just do it anyway if they want. So they can say, oh, well, we just prefer this gun. It's the best gun. So that's what we're going to use. Whereas for the maps, the league decides what the map pool is, and that's what they did last year. So I hope the CDL again has a pretty firm fist on this one. This is the state to play in the Pro League. Falcons are the #1 seed. Now, like I said yesterday, I'm not sure if they really are, because all the win-loss is the same between Falcons, OpTic and FaZe, so it comes down to, well, OpTic also beat Falcons in the first weekend, so they have that kind of head-to-head. Falcons haven't played FaZe yet, but in terms of strength of schedule, I think FaZe maybe slightly have the edge. Whatever, we are probably going to see an actual resolution here by next weekend's. It's pretty unlikely that all these teams will remain same win-loss, same map count next time around. Of course, there are other contenders as well. Thieves, next weekend, they play Ravens and Boston. So, look, if they play the same way they did against OpTic, and if Kenny plays the same way, those are very much winnable series. Thieves could find themselves 5-2. And, you know, I'm not just don't want to preempt it, right? Thieves might struggle again in those two series. Ravens with Exceed are a threat. Boston are a threat if they go to Game 5, but, you know, we know that they can collapse a bit. We've seen that so far this season. Boston can be a threat in the other maps as well, but it just, you know, their performance of the last couple of weeks has been questionable. So has it from Thieves. But if Thieves end this stage 5-2 with the top seeds, they're in a better position than they certainly look like they were going to be in a couple of weeks ago. This is the state to play in the Pro League. Xnid was absolutely delighted, actually. Pred's been obviously playing really well to get to this point. But Xnib was pretty delighted seeing Falcons at #1. Look, it's a nice step for the Falcons to get to this point. We did wonder, certainly when Falcons came in, they started splashing some cash. How long would it take for this franchise to get competitive? I still don't think we have a clear answer to that question yet. We'll have to see how they go on LAN, I think, before we judge fully. But look, it's taken a lot of money, they've signed some top quality players, and they are joint, at the very least, #1 in the standings right now. They've had a great start to the new year, they look like the team that's arguably improving the most. I think Xnid's been a key part of that with the energy that he brings. Pred's been one of the top SMGs in the game over the last few weeks, his search and destroy has been especially good. Cell's been holding his own, Kismet seems to be finding his feet on what to do to work with this roster, and they're looking like a bit of a force, but again, is it too early to say, especially given that a team like Ravens, they've won their last 3 matches in a row. Nobody really knows how good they're going to be. I know the OpTic guys tried to do their prediction the other day for what the tier list of the rankings might be right now, having Ravens 3rd, I think they had. They had OpTic down in like 7th, Falcons in 5th or something. So, look, I'm sure that those stories are going to change when we actually get to the major. But let's talk about this GA drama, because we know that since the start of this game, it's been an M15 and Drazah show. And I don't know if many of the fans are especially happy about that. I don't think this meta is great. I've said it a few times. I think the guns are arguably too similar. The Drazah doesn't move, it shoots laser beams. The M15 is arguably just kind of too good compared to the Drazah. It fires really quickly. We've seen aBeZy the other day, who's notorious entry aggressive SMG player using the M15, which probably tells you a fair bit about the way the meta currently is. They did try the MPC for like 1 weekend, and then, or literally 1 day actually, and then they banned it, which was hilarious because as Shotzzy's about to describe, maybe not in this clip, but he did say he was running the MPC every scrim that whole week before they played FaZe. He pulled it out on Scar, he got slammed, he put it away, but all the teams were running the MPC that week, and then there was literally 1 day of league matches that it was used, and then they banned it immediately, and it wasn't even that good on that day. So Dashy says there's a lot of bias in play there. But we know that there's been a new patch update. The M15 has been nerfed, the Drazah has been nerfed. Octane says that the pros have potentially agreed to revisit many of these GAs. Not saying they're going to do it for sure, and he says there needs more teams to agree to this to make it happen definitely, but it is pretty likely that after Major 1, the pros will sit down and say, okay, the way the current meta is, because it's difficult to keep track of all the GAs, but effectively they've, within reason, GA'd everything that isn't the M15 and the Drazah. So there's a question on whether all of those things become open again, whether some of the DLC guns become open again, whether, what about the M8, right? Could that be a possibility to try and bring that into the meta? I know I've wanted that for some time. I still doubt that's going to happen, but Octane says the pros might consider an absolute open, blank slate, clear everything off, and then decide from scratch once the new meta comes into play with the, obviously, the patch update that's going to change things and going to make the Drazah and the M15 probably quite substantially worse, whether some other weapon is potentially more viable now.
But apparently the pros have, this is a leak moment right here because I need content. Apparently the pros have agreed, or some of them have agreed, apparently there needs to be more teams, to revisit all GAs post Major 1 with the introduction of Season 2. They are re-allowing every gun that was previously GA'd for testing again after the Major, so we'll see how that pans out. I don't know what is going to happen from that, but we'll see.
That's good for the most part, but at the same time, like, yeah, that actually is good because, bro, I'm not gonna lie, the Drazah is like way too easy to shoot, dude. At least far range, that shit doesn't even move, bro. The Drazah is the only sub that doesn't move. Tell me why the fuck that's like a thing.
The NPC got a
literally no recoil,
bro. I want to use that gun, bro.
Wait, so on the new patch, it's probably even better.
Fuck yeah, bro. But that's just GA. This shit.
I don't know why, dude.
I don't know why either.
Like, okay, I will say in this patch it makes sense, but the patch that we're playing right now makes no fucking sense.
I feel like the last patch we just played was strictly a biased GA, but it's a topic for another.
Literally
day.
Makes no fucking sense. Not like that shit was that broken, bro. The fucking three would have been on the map, or I guess 3 was 3 on the map. At one point right now.
Not really. No.
I guess on Blackheart. Remember that one time, but I think that was like on some trolley shit.
I mean, everyone was starting to try it. That doesn't mean like.
Bro, I was hearing pros say that they're not really good with it. They don't understand it, and the next day they're the ones voting it out. So I'm like, I said OP or you just asked what it, you know what I mean? That's very biased, but all I know 7 years ago, this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was very different, like the way like how GAs are now
Like,
compared
because
to.
in order to use the gun, you got to be able to like push up and get in positions. And, like, I don't know.
I mean, this new NPC could be OP, so what do we know? But
Shotzzy's struggles in recent weeks, of course, have been noted. He's clearly not a massive fan of the way that the Drazah is as an SMG. You know, as he says, it doesn't really move. It doesn't seem to make that much sense compared to the AR in many respects. We'll see what they do, right? But Octane reckons that if a couple more pro teams are agreeing, they might throw these current GAs out the window and contemplate what happens next, which is, I think, a fair argument. But also, where will it go, right? Will we start to see the NPC back in play? Because, as Dashy says, the NPC might be really good because it's got another small buff. The other weapons, we know the Drazah's been nerfed. So is there an option, maybe the NPC becomes the dominant force in the meta going forwards? Is that a good or a bad thing with the pros? I mean, they already banned it when it wasn't very good. Imagine it gets good. Then what are they going to do? They're probably going to ban it for sure. What about the Razor 9mm? What about the Maddox, right? As Dashy was also talking about, the Maddox is in the game. He thinks there needs to be some changes made there, but potentially a weapon that could be viable. So, yeah, it would be interesting. We often see this in COD history. The first major, the weapons used can be different to the rest of the year. We've seen multiple times that ARs especially, not usually SMGs actually, but mainly ARs, they play with them for the first major, they're just a little bit too good, then they get rid of them. We saw it with the in Black Ops Cold War, we saw it with the XM4, that was the AR that was used for like the entirety of Major 1. Then it got banned and they used the Krig instead for the rest of the year. In World War II, for example, there was the FG42 that they used for the first stint of the game. Then they banned that and it was just the STG and the bar from then to the end of the season. And we've seen this a few times. So I would say that this year is not an impossibility for that to happen as well. But also if the M15 is getting nerfed, maybe you just keep using the M15 and then it's slightly weaker and then the SMGs get a little stronger. But it's interesting what it means for the teams because, as Dashy says, he thinks there's a lot of bias in these GAs, and there's always a lot of bias in the GAs. It is, to some extent, only inevitable and natural that the teams will choose things that are beneficial for them. Whether the league should step in and prevent that from happening and create some sort of GA committee, that's probably a good question, but we've asked that for years and nothing, it seems, has happened on that yet. But for OpTic, right now, their SMGs look like they're struggling a little more. It wouldn't be a surprise to see OpTic look for a potential meta change. You know, if we went to something like using the Razor 9mm all the time and it was a very different style of SMG and the way that you had to play the game changed as a result of the gunfights you could take, would that favour a player like Shotzzy? Possibly, compared to the way the Drazah currently is. So, something worth thinking about for these teams going forwards, but intrigue to your thoughts in the comments below. Just one final thing, I thought this was kind of crazy. Looking back at all the VODs Brian stats did, these are the players who killed the individual for the final time who then went on to retire. So Scump's final death came from Zinni. Now, of course, famously, Scump dropped like a 1.3 on Zinni's head and won that series against Zinni. And I think of all these players, the only players that Brian Stats pointed out have won their final series was Scump, because it was a qualifier against Methods, and then Nadeshot, because he won a 7th place qualifier at the old 7th place like consolation playoff match at the Advanced Warfare World Championship. Everyone else, of course, lost their final series they ever played, and Crim's final death was to Scump, which I think is actually pretty cool. CleanX is on there a couple of times for Parasite and for Formal. Probably the biggest surprising name really is Blast, who got the final kill ever against both Karma and JCap, two absolute all-time legends. So that's something for his record books. Zuma's final death came against Dylan Cod. You've got, you know, some other notable names on here as well. Slash's final death the other day was against Xnid. Clay's was against Scrap, which is actually quite fitting if you guys remember what was happening towards the end of Clayster's season that year. So anyway, intrigue to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. I'll just give you guys a quick sneak peek of the matches this weekend, starting really with another 2-match day Friday. But as 2-match days go, this one is pretty good. OpTic Ravens, which, okay, you might think on paper, if going into the season you wouldn't have expected much, but right now that's looking pretty tasty with the Exceed situation and OpTic being in a precarious spot. And then Toronto Gentlemates, which is pretty tough to call, and it's going to be critical in terms of seeding. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.